Well, if we're going to talk about money and spirituality, then we need to talk about what they are. What is spirituality? I'm sure we've all got some of our own ideas about that. To me, it's recognizing our underlying unity, as mankind, as living beings, in consciousness, the consciousness that underlies everything, all the kingdoms, all the higher divine kingdoms. There's consciousness in everything. And that's one of the key tenets of Laurency's and Pythagoras' statements, that there is matter, motion, and consciousness. Those are the three fundamentals. And spirituality, in other words, used in a lot of different ways these days, but I think generally it means not based on worldly values, not on material success or wealth or power or possession of things. It's involvement in our inner higher nature. It's involvement with the soul, really, with our higher selves. We've got, all of us, this beautiful potential to be realized here in this world, this soul that is fully realized on higher levels, but we're working towards understanding that level of consciousness and bringing it through here. That's part of spirituality to me. So money and spirituality, is that an oxymoron? Certainly a lot of people seem to think so, that money and spirituality are oil and water. Well, we're going to talk about that. That's an important thing to think about. They're certainly related in this world. When you're in the physical world, money is a factor. Let me read an Alice Bailey quote here about money. This whole question of money is one of the greatest difficulty at this time, and also one of the utmost simplicity. The difficulty is due to the wrong thought, which for generations has been brought to bear upon the problem, leading to wrong attitudes, even among the most devoted disciples. The attitude of humanity to money has been colored by greed, by grasping for the lower self, by jealousy, by material desire, and by the heartbreaking need for it, which in its turn is the result of these wrong attitudes. That's an interesting statement, that definitely a lot of suffering over not having money in this world. And that she's stating clearly here, or the Tibetan is stating clearly here, that is the result of the wrong attitudes of those who do have money. Well, the right attitudes, Bailey says, to read another quote, as money has in the past ministered to personal and family need, so in the future it must minister to group and world need. Well, that sounds good. We'll talk about how that might be working out. Maybe some successes in that effort. I think there have been some. So what is money? Money is crystallized human effort, is one way to put it. It's an agreed upon representation of human endeavor. Money can be exchanged for human effort. It's a very human thing. I mean, you can't pay an animal to do something for you with money, right? It's people only. And it's also a very physical world thing. Money in the afterlife is useless, right? There's no such thing. It's not really required. It's physical plane and human phenomena. For too many people, it is practically life itself. And that's one of the tragedies of physical existence, is that without money, people can find themselves in a very bad situation. I mean, especially in America, where it's been about money from the start. This is a place where money is pretty much required, and it's set up to make sure it is. I mean, we hopefully, as souls, before we came here, knew we'd be signing up for this requirement, that we somehow obtain money here. But society is constructed so that we have to have it. We all have to play the money game one way or another. And even if you own a piece of land and you can build your own house and grow your own food, you're going to have to pay property tax. You kind of need to rent that land from the government. So it's very hard to escape the money game. And I wish it was easier. It's kind of a problem I have with property tax, because I know some people could be fine if they could just live a simple existence on their own land, their own effort. But that's not really an option. the world is changing. Bill Katzenstein, who's in the audience here, gave a recent presentation with a lot of great statistics about how humanitarian efforts on the part of nations, such as the US and others with financial, financial aid, other kinds of support, have actually, we've gone since 1990, when the 38% of the world was considered to be in dire poverty, with really struggling over the lack of basic things, to 19% now. Human goodwill has manifested out there in a number of ways. It's an encouraging thing to think about. Foreign aid, and a lot of the foreign aid is maybe some of the motivations are corporate or business oriented, but really for people to succeed enough in this world and increase their income, being productive in some fashion in the context of business or work is pretty much required. So that is an assistance to people if we can get them involved in something where they can make some money. But it does, China especially went from having a largely not wealthy population to now having a huge middle class, and hundreds of millions of people have made a transition there. It does remain to be seen if the world can survive having another billion people that live like Americans or Europeans, because we're pretty hard on the environment as far as using resources and releasing carbon dioxide. Speaking of carbon dioxide, climate change is one of the factors that is slowing down the improvement of the situation with poverty for people, because of their climate refugees now. I mean, there are problems with water and heat in many different places. There are also increased authoritarian and failed states. That's a problem. There's corruption, et cetera. There are other factors that Bill points out very nicely in his presentation that are slowing down this general improvement. But let's hope we can still keep it going, even if we can't keep up the same rate. So another aspect of money is how people relate to it, of course, is that it is the means to satisfy desire. Well, as Buddha says, to paraphrase a quote from Buddha, all the gold in the world is not enough to satisfy the desire of one man. I have a little interruption from the cat here. He wants to participate in this. So desire and money is a combination that has an infinite downside, in terms of people never being satisfied, never having enough, trying to find more and more and more. If the mental nature doesn't step in to address the desire, then you've got a really bad situation with money. So I don't think that thinking of it strictly as a way to realize desires is it's nice to improve that and bring the mind in. So money is, like I said, it's a construct, a human construct. It has consensus value. And as much as we rely on it to retain that value, it hasn't always. And I actually got to see that firsthand in 1981. I bought a house in 1981 and had a mortgage at 18% interest. Actually, 3 mortgages, 18%, 14%, and 10%. The consensus at that time was that money could very well lose all its value. There wasn't a lot of faith in it. That was actually quite a financial crisis period, and fortunately it stabilized. But my grandfather, Norman Stevens, who's been a spiritual teacher, certainly a guide of mine for most of my life, he was always concerned that money would suddenly just lose its value. That consensus would fall apart, that, we weren't on the gold standard. It was all backed up by faith now. It wasn't backed up by gold anymore. And he was an advocate of having food set aside. And he said the people who are in communities that are supportive of each other are the ones who would actually do fine if that happened, or at least do better. That his thought was that there'd be a 2-year period of everybody having to figure out barter and everything else. But it would be a complete restructuring that would fix a lot of problems, which I can imagine could be possible. But then, when you've got him telling this warning about this for 40 years, my father finally said, well, that's enough of that. I can't live like there's impending doom. A lot of people still do live that way. And I can't say they're not right, but there's actually a Bailey quote in the handout that talks about if humanity can't learn to use money responsibly, maybe the value of money will need to be just destroyed, taken away, that people have to learn other ways to do things. I'm really hoping it doesn't come to that. Anyway, money is this consensus about how much human effort is $1 worth, right? So here we all are trying to relate to money in the world, and that means the concept of right livelihood is really important. And it's really kind of a shock what people appear to be willing to do for money in this world. I don't think there are limits. I mean, people, all the most horrible things you can imagine in this world, people are willing to do for money. And renting out their bodies for others to use, or their minds, and actually even a worse thing, according to esoterics, but in service of lying propaganda to serve a political cause or whatever. That's an awful thing for somebody to use their mind for. And these despicable frauds that I get these phone calls. I'm sure everybody gets them these days, where somebody's, you need to contact us right away, or you'll be taken to court, and we've got a warrant for your arrest, and or your computer is infected with a virus, and we have all your passwords. I don't know. Just it goes on and on. There are different approaches to this when it happens. They say, just hang up. But I like to try to talk to these people, and say, you seem like an intelligent person. You're working with this technology, you're calling me. Don't you know that lying and stealing lead to very bad results down the road for you personally? If you were stealing, you will eventually lose the right to keep anything. You will not be able to keep what you have because you don't respect anybody else's right to keep what they have. And if you're lying, you eventually lose the ability to recognize the truth, which is certainly a problem. If they sound like they're from India, I bring up karma. But I don't think they've benefited too much from my little talks about these things. Still, they've heard it at least. That might mean something for them. There are other really tragic situations in the world when, we have addicts that need money that are going to suffer horribly if they don't get money. What an awful trap. And then very intelligent people rationalizing very bad behavior. An example of that to me, though it's fictional, is the series Breaking Bad. You've got Walter White, who's really brilliant. And his excuse is he's got to make money for his family. I mean, he's got cancer. He knows he's going to die. So, all right, he's going to start doing bad things to make money. And it can only get worse and worse and worse there. And he's able to rationalize it all the way along. When it comes to right livelihood, the only surefire way that I've found to actually make money is by working at a job. I've tried other things, didn't really work out. But the interesting thing is, I know that there are people who really finesse this aspect of making money, working, where they're doing something they enjoy so much and feeds their soul and serves their inner purpose, and they're making money doing that. And what mastery of the money question that is. I'm very impressed with that when people do it. And those people would keep doing the same thing. They would keep, whether they got paid or not, as long as somehow their other needs were met, they just enjoy doing that. So my job is not that kind of job. Nobody's going to do it for free. Certainly not me. So, but I think that's what most kinds of jobs are. And then we've got our other opportunities to learn from that kind of situation. I'll be talking about that a little more later, but it's certainly an opportunity to learn to find the best in something. I think some people actually start out and manage to solve the problem and are doing art or uh, teaching or something that's really serving. And they've achieved that thing I mentioned, where they're making money in perfect harmony with their own happiness. But then one of the problems with money comes along, that they decide they want to make more money and they commercialize their efforts, and it's known as selling out, and they lose their creative purity, and it's too bad. There's so many patterns of thought and behavior where we can be tripped up with money. And really, right livelihood, I think, could also be defined as conscious livelihood. You know, what is this money? How am I making this money? Is it really serving me, serving others? Look at the implications, the consequences. So if you've got any money, you've got to think about right and wrong use of money. There's responsibility when you've got money. It's power, responsibility, and power go hand in hand, and not just should go hand in hand. A lot of people don't realize they go hand in hand and end up creating bad sowing and reaping for themselves, because they need to learn about the responsibilities that go with money. To take responsibility is a much higher turn of the spiral than just mine. This is my money. I can do whatever I want with it. Well, this being all in it together aspect of spirituality is eventually going to make itself known to all of us. And the sooner we act from that place, the better. There was an interesting story in the Bailey books about how the US industrialists from the late 1800s that made massive fortunes on railroads and oil, and they were geniuses of industry. Did they use their money well? Well, that's certainly a mixed bag. Rockefeller, Carnegie started a lot of libraries. I'm impressed with that, but I don't think he did so well in some other areas. I don't really know, but what the story says from Bailey is that after they died, they were offered a special training in the right use of money, and they all accepted the offer. So I guess there's some hope for them. I mean, hopefully our current crop of billionaires playing in space these days will be offered the same thing once they die. And I've got to say, thank goodness for philanthropic ex-spouses, because the billions end up getting used in some new good ways. I mean, I've got to say, Bill Gates, at least, despite all the amazing conspiracy theory attacks from the haters of good people, I really think there is a special effort to attack good people out there. I think he and Melinda have done some amazing work to try to eliminate diseases in Africa, come up with solutions to health problems that kill millions of people. And here they are getting accused of the stupidest things, injecting nanobots into everybody's bloodstreams as vaccines. Come on. So when you see money getting spread around in a good way, it reminds me of the quote from Dolly Levi from Hello, Dolly. Money, pardon the expression, is like manure. It's not worth a thing unless it's spread around, encouraging young things to grow. Well, that strikes me as a spiritual use of money, encouraging young things to grow. When you look at the way people spend vast fortunes, I have to just marvel at the ignorance of sowing and reaping, karma. I mean, we're all planting the seeds for our future lives, and we'll return to the kind of world we helped create. If we've got people that are spending their money trying to preserve their fortunes in the oil industry and deny climate change, or, basically, that's greed at work, right? Well, if the kind of world they'll come back to is the one they've helped create, and it's going to have some problems. I mean, there will have to be such worlds, such epics of humanity, for those people to get the appropriate karma for their actions. And there will be heaven worlds too ahead for humanity as we continue to evolve, and many people are planting the seeds of those worlds, and will come back to participate in those worlds because of their good efforts. I'm I'm funding my retirement with my work now, but I'm also trying to fund my next incarnation's opportunities by right choices, by giving, I suppose that is a selfish way to phrase it, that, I was trying to do that for myself, but I'm part of everything, I'm doing it for everybody and me at the same time. We talk about some of the billionaires and the people with lots of money, that they're very well organized in trying to preserve their wealth to the point where it can be very bad for the rest of humanity. I mean, those industrialists I mentioned, back in those days, human labor was a cheap commodity. People were brought in and discarded when they were burned out. And the labor movement actually was partially started by our guides from the next kingdom beyond human. And it tried to offset that and give the working people some rights. And really, a lot of the rights we have at work these days, we wouldn't have if it wasn't for them. Weekends and sick time and vacations and safe working conditions, et cetera. We have them to thank. Unfortunately, the union movement has also fallen on some weaknesses of its own, and become somewhat corrupt at times, and it's too bad. There have to be some other ways we offset the power of those who are working strictly for their own wealth. This country, it's fascinating to read Heather Cox Richardson, who is a historian who talks about our current times and contrasts them to times 150 years ago or so, and all these comparisons. There was a time then when the rich tried to take control of everything, basically make an oligarchy, which we're in danger of now. But the oligarchy at that time the attempt was being set up by the slaveholders and the slaveholding states. The rich landowners and slaveholders of the times came closer than anybody really realizes now to running the whole country, because all they had to do was get a few more states, new states that were being formed out in the West, get those territories converted into slave-holding states. Then they would have enough senators. Then they could put their own people in the Supreme Court. Then they would have enough votes to basically run everything. And if it wasn't for people like Lincoln and others that stood up to them, things would have been very different. She's actually got a book called How the South Won the War, which kind of emphasizes how much power they've still retained to support the wealthy. I mean, it's the betrayal of the indigenous people for their land. There are just so many sad stories related to greed in this country. We've got some work to do to clear that out. And we're still in the thick of it. When you look at the wars that we've been involved in, some incredibly irresponsible, bloodthirsty, bad wars. I mean, like the war in Iraq, it's just an enormous national embarrassment, and everybody lost. Nobody really wins when 100,000 plus of the local population are killed to make peace, right? And our soldiers and the trauma and the psychological wounding of so many people, there actually are winners to wars like that, though. The defense industry, they make lots of profits. They're the only winners, and they win every war. And the United States sells half of the weapons in the world. So we're still in the middle of our devotion to money at any cost here. Another misuse of money that particularly the wealthy are capable of is insulating themselves from life, moving into a circle of people and living situation that just basically means they don't have to have any contact or even awareness of the suffering in the world that's caused by lack of money. That there will be poor always, says the Bible. But I think there's a corollary to that we have to deal with, and that is that there will be rich always. And the rich aren't keen on obeying any particular rules in general. And that's why the Mayans, I think, came up with a really interesting approach to this. When I was reading about this in Martin Prechtel's book about the Mayans, when someone among them becomes more wealthy than the others, and there's some danger of that going to their heads or whatever, they're given special roles impressive, important, respected roles in the community that I don't know the example of a title, but it's, some esteemed position. And one of the responsibilities of the holder of that position is to throw large banquets and ceremonies for holidays, of which this goes over just great with everybody. And before long, this monetary imbalance in the society is eliminated. I thought that was pretty clever. It's kind of a catch-22 here that money is required to help refocus humanity on values higher than money. There are some interesting things, a lot of experiments going on with money these days, like Kiva. I think it's fascinating that there is an organization that makes small loans to individuals that you and I can go put money in here. It gets loaned, a specific loan from us to some individual in some small country. 81% of these loans are to women, and really empowering women in these cultures really helps shift the whole population into a higher level of prosperity. It gives them a way to contribute much more than just having babies. It gives them a chance to use their creativity that culturally they may have been denied. There's a 97.1 repayment rate for these Kiva loans, and billions of dollars have gone out in programs like this. There are many others like that. So just promoting new ways of thinking, encouraging discussions. There's the Pioneers Conference that does a lot of great review of how we can use our resources and our money. There are lots of initiatives. They'll need money, and that money will have to be wielded by imperfect humans. It would be nice if we could be perfect and do just the right thing with it. And we'll have to try. Sometimes some of the worst things are done by well-meaning people. We're really gonna have to keep an eye on that. When you look at who's doing good things, there's Dolly Parton out there. She's made millions and millions of dollars, and she's giving millions of dollars away to get books for children, to help fund the creation of a COVID vaccine. That's an example of a really a very wealthy person coming from the right place. And that's where money and spirituality aren't oil and water. Giving it all away is not necessarily the answer. There's the parable in the Bible about the rich young man that when he asked Jesus how he could go to heaven, he was told, well, obey the commandments, etc. I do obey them. What else? Well, you can give away all your money and follow me. And Laurency has some thoughts on that. He doesn't think that was actually what was stated. And let me read you a quote that he has on this topic. No sensible man gives away everything which a good reaping has brought to him and which he is supposed to learn to manage in the right way. That is also an ability that must be acquired. So if it's us that has to manage the wealth and the resources of the world to try to make things better, we're going to have to learn how to have it. We're going to have to learn how to acquire it and manage it. And here's another quote from Laurency. Sacrifice and renunciation is nothing good in itself. You may sacrifice and renounce in many different perverse ways. Thus, it is abortive to save and scrape in order to will your money away to charities. In so doing, you have lost the opportunity of cultivating the qualities that go along with the personal sympathy for the needy you meet everywhere. You've thoughtlessly passed so many needy people by. Leaving charity to other people is to lose sight of the essential. Interesting perspective. The great patrons of history, Maecenas is a famous Roman patron who supported the poets and the playwrights and artists of all kinds, and his name has been, back when everybody studied Latin in those times more, his name was always associated with the great patrons. But thank goodness there are patrons. So much that is beautiful is not going to be supported without the people who can appreciate it. So there's another intersection of money and spirituality. People, just I think that answers the question, really. Can I have money and be a good person? People have beliefs about money that limit them in accepting money, partly because they don't think they can be a good person and have money. If money is used responsibly, consciously, yes. I mean, this idea that I can't have money because I won't be a good person, I'll be corrupted. That's a pattern of thinking, a crystallized misconception that goes very deep. And really, if you're convinced that money is associated with, bad behavior, you're sure not going to be acquiring much money. That will block you entirely. According to the esoteric history, Jesus, or Jeshu, to use the correct name, was actually from a wealthy family. But I think it's interesting that he also, and Laurency agrees that this actually happened, he chased the moneylenders out of the temple. I don't know about flipping over the tables or using a whip like some of the quotes, but he actually, according to Laurency, used his voice to drive out the moneylenders and to try to return respect for the temple. So when it comes to right use of money, we learn through our decisions. A lot of money allows us to make much worse bad decisions. Let's hope we have correspondingly large lessons that we learn from it. I mean, I've had my opportunities with money, and I'm sure that I have not used it correctly at times, and I hope I've learned, but I'm glad I've had the opportunity. And my grandfather used to say that people who start to figure things out on the spiritual path, once they start really getting rolling, they face three very large temptations. Money is one of them, sex, and status. And many is the teacher, the guru, who has crashed on these rocks, as we know. Well, if we're going to talk about money, we can talk about the systems it's part of, and government is a big part. And interestingly, for the last 120 years or so, people have been arguing over financial systems of government, which is definitely preferable to arguing about which king is best. These ideologies are, and sometimes they're at the core of wars themselves. Capitalism, socialism, communism, often used as scare words to attack. One attacks the other, calling the other one a socialist, all those things. But few people really have made the effort to know what they mean. They just take the word of Fox News or something and think they know. So the thing about the rich that will be here always, that I mentioned, is they will always be trying to get their way. This is a fact of life. And we can't get rid of the rich. And even I can read you some Laurency quotes about, I think I've mentioned in some of the talks on politics, that their use of capital is really much smarter than a government that tries to use capital. That will ultimately fail. Governments aren't very good at running businesses. That has to be acknowledged. I think we ought to know. What they are good at, and what they could be doing, if you follow Laurency, is being efficient auditors and regulating to make sure that things are fair, that the rights of the individual are protected from businesses. Basically, corporations, the wealthy, they're a 900-pound gorilla. And the only thing that's going to stop a 900-pound gorilla is another 900-pound gorilla. And that is really what the government needs to be. It doesn't need to be in business itself, and it certainly shouldn't be run by those wealthy people. This recent, this thing a while back where it was decided that corporations have the rights of people was an enormous mistake. It is yet to be seen whether democracy will survive this mistake, because the massive amounts of money that have been put into confusing people and lying people and getting them to support this or that and attacking good initiatives because it doesn't serve the money. Well, we'll find out. I really hope we survive that. I mean, I hope we have a government that can fix that. I mean, there are many different problems having to do with money and government. It was hoped You can read in the Bailey books. I think, I don't know if I put a quote in there in the handout from this, but they were hoping that the world wars, the suffering, tremendous suffering and destruction of the old way of thinking and doing things, is not to mention physical infrastructure and lives, would cause people to reevaluate their values, to take a step from materialism. Materialism got us into the mess of the wars, and would the suffering get us out? They were hoping. And they've said there are several possibilities. When they wrote after the war, in 1950 or so, in the Bailey books, talks about, well, one, Russia could take over. That would be a nightmare. It could be all against all these countries in an armed armistice, just trying to dominate each other. It could be that the U.S., with its power, the way they put it was crush and joins with England. They crush Russia and they take over. And then, unfortunately, the things that we've learned about the values would probably be lost in that situation, because this commercial, money-oriented, business-oriented society of the United States is really, would just take us back to where we were. Kind of seems like we've gone a long way in that direction. There are so many big unsolved problems involving money and government, such as taxation. I mean, nobody wants to be taxed, but somebody's got to pay for government services. And even Laurency says that's an unsolved problem. He doesn't offer a solution. So it all does come down to personal choices. This is where you and I have to think about it. What does money mean to you? What does this balance between money and spirituality mean? We may be trying to not be of this world, but as they say, don't be of the world, but we're certainly in it. We're in the world. We have to deal with it. My grandparents, Norman, Stevens again, and Winona, she was an heiress with a vast fortune. Like, it was the equivalent of $1 billion in 1920. And I don't think that brought them a lot of joy. It meant they didn't have to work like me, but it attracted some really bad characters and it damaged the family. I think I've told some of that story. And when Winona had died and Norman had finally spent the last of all that money, I think he was relieved to be a simple, non-wealthy person. And then he could just focus on his teaching. I mean, he accepted donations for the mimeograph machine. That had to get paid for. And for postage, they mailed out a newsletter. He hadn't preserved the billions to pay for those things, but he was happy to accept money to get that done. So, we talked about how all the gold in the world isn't enough to satisfy desire. Well, how much money? That's a big question, right? There's a famous story. Kurt Vonnegut was talking to Joseph Heller, these two famous authors of the last century, funny phrase to use. But Joseph Heller, he wrote Catch-22, a really great book. And they were at a party thrown by a billionaire. This billionaire, Vonnegut said to Heller, "How does it feel to know that guy throwing this party made more money last week than you made from all your royalties for Catch-22?" And Joseph Heller said, "It doesn't bother me at all, because I have something that he will never have. Knowledge that I have enough." Now, if I were his editor, I would have shortened his statement to just enough. I think that answers the question really well. That's something he will never have. Enough. Well, my own situation right now, it's interesting. Our relationship with money changes over the phases of our lives. And I'm in a phase where the concept of enough is meaning a lot to me, because once I get to a certain point here, I will be able to retire. I will have enough. And I'm very much looking forward to that. What retirement means to me is to stop doing what I've been doing for so many years, trying to make more money. I get to stop and just focus on things like this talk, books. I've got stories to tell. I can't wait to work on those things. And it's interesting, no longer trying to make money, this is an American term, making money. That's how we talk about it. In other countries, they use somewhat different terms. The Germans earn money. The Italians find money. The French gain it or win it. English have money or possess it. Americans make it. You know, I don't want to complain too much about having had to work. It's been a way that I've been kept in interaction with everyone. You know, if you win the lottery winners also, I quit my job, and well, then they've disconnected from their opportunities to learn they've had from the community that they're part of, you know, their working community. Well, that's not necessarily good. It's, in my own case, I have plenty of things I intend to do. I'll be able to keep busy, but I will miss the people. I mean, I think I've succeeded in some degree of that challenge of figuring out how to like what you have to do when you realize that people are people and you're working with people, and that in them is a beautiful divine soul looking for expression, and that their patterns are just temporary phenomena. They're patterns that make them annoying or whatever, you know, they're temporary. And that if you can work with them and focus on what's permanent in them, it doesn't matter if you're talking about, you know, how you've got to upgrade the storage operating system for the, you know, the array that's in some data center. You're still working with people, and it's still an interaction with the divine in a way. You know, the personal choices about money are influenced a great deal by the patterns that we have, patterns of thought, like I mentioned before. There's a great challenge that we face in the human kingdom, this challenge of perceiving ourselves as separate. And that challenge has been called the great lie. And of course, it hardly seems like a lie when it's very real to us in our independent physical bodies trying to talk to each other to communicate. There's not collective consciousness very apparent here in this kingdom, even though that is ahead of us in the next kingdom. We'll overcome this illusion of separateness and be able to connect directly consciousness to consciousness. Money keeps playing into this and reinforcing this with patterns like I have to, you know, that's mine, and I you know, I've worked hard to get that, I can't give that away. It's every man for himself. You know, that kind of thinking is really not going to help us get anywhere. And of course, we start off with patterns very early. If there's anything that couples fight about more than anything else, it's money. And here as children, we overhear our parents fighting. And that's where we pick up some patterns. Like there's never enough money. That no, you can't spend that. You spent too much. You're wasting money. There's only so much. You know, this belief in lack plays right into this this feeling of separateness, and it plays into a life where lack defines us, where we're not really willing to recognize opportunity or accept abundance in our lives. It's just waiting there for us, really. I mean, this is what I was raised in the Church of Religious Science, and they emphasize this again and again, that the universe is an abundant place, wanting to give to us and through us. Well, at least that was a good thing to pick up when I was young, rather than various patterns. I picked a few up, I'm sure. I didn't experiment on the patterns about money when I was, I don't know, 22. This was way back. I was just finishing up my college years in Ithaca, New York. And I managed to acquire this very cool Super 8 camera, film camera. There was no video in 1979 when I did this. And I wanted to make a movie about people's patterns about money. So we set this camera up over the pedestrian mall in downtown Ithaca, where people just walking. It was a beautiful summer day. I think it was August. The camera was in a second story window. Could see down, could see me. People on the street couldn't see the camera. And I had a little tape recorder in my backpack sitting next to me. There, I sat on the cement divider there with my long red hair and my beard. And I think I was only wearing cutoff shorts on this warm summer day. fact, I know I was. And well, I had $40 and $1 bills in my back pocket. And so I would pull a dollar bill out one at a time and hold it out as people walk by and say, free money. Here's $1. Just go ahead, take it. I don't need it. I've got plenty. You can have it. And I got a lot of interesting reactions, as you might imagine. I think the first reaction I got was people making a very wide circle to avoid me. They would just take at least 15 feet away from the crazy guy, seemed to be their attitude. And then I remember a fellow walking up to me. He took the dollar out of my hand, and then he stood there looking at me, waiting for what's next, waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know, what was my agenda? What was I trying to sell him? He just stood there holding the dollar, waiting to find out what was going to happen next. And I think he was pretty surprised when there wasn't anything happening next. There you go. Thank you. Go ahead. You can have it. Maybe I changed something there. You know, I like to think that people's patterns are affected by interactions like this. And then a young woman came and said, well, I don't need the money either, you know. And I said, well, let me just give this to you anyway. And maybe you can find somebody who needs it. And she thought about that and took the dollar. And then sometime later, she came back and said, I did find somebody who needed it. They were just short of the money they needed for bus fare. They were trying to get out of town. And I gave them this dollar, and this person was so happy. And she was happy that she'd helped this person. And she came back and then made me happy. And this $1 bill had made 3 people happy. So that meant a lot to me. So I gave her another $1 bill and said, you did a great job with that $1 bill. See if you can find somebody else that needs $1 too. And that, to me, this says a lot about what money can do. That same $1 bill could pass through several people's hands, and each one of them experiencing a short moment of grace that someone gave them $1, even if they didn't need it. There was giving happening, you know. Everybody works so hard for their money, and here's $1 that just came to me. Well, that was all fun. And then some little kids came by, and I gave them $1 bills too. What the heck? They took the $1 bills just down the street, about half a block to the McDonald's, and spent the dollars there and told everybody in the McDonald's about the guy down the street giving away money. And the manager of the McDonald's, this is a person that is willing to manage a McDonald's for money. So he did not think much of somebody who would just give money away when he was working so hard for it. So he called the police. And now that I look back, I can kind of see a little more why he did that. You know, there's a guy giving money to little kids. You know, okay, it didn't occur to me at the time, that dynamic, but the policeman came to talk to me. He was very puzzled, and I think really just didn't know what to do. I wasn't really doing anything wrong. He asked me if I was sure I had enough for myself. No, I'm fine. So, well, I better take your name down. I think what his thinking was that maybe he should check for escapees from nearby sanitariums and mental institutions. I might be one of them. It's interesting that giving puts you in the ranks of the crazy people for a lot of other people. I'll be retired before too long, and I can actually go dig up that old film. I have it from 1979 and the audio cassettes. Maybe I can put it all together and make an interesting movie. I am sure I have my patterns of about money, and I'm still trying to figure out if it's a pattern about money I've been having problems with recently, or if it's someone else's pattern. I moved from Port Townsend, Washington to Salt Lake City, Utah, a little over, a year and a few months ago. And my employer decided that I deserved less money. This was a shock. Well, I kind of knew it was coming, but they wanted to cut my pay quite a bit, substantially. And their logic was, we pay what the going rate is in the workforce where you are. And your job title as an IT manager pays this much here. It pays that much there in Seattle. So we're going to lower your pay. And here I am doing exactly the same job, sitting in exactly the same, in front of the same monitors and computer. Nothing has changed, but somehow I'm worth less to my employer because I live in Salt Lake City. I mean, and I said, well, it's the cost of living, right? Is that's why you're doing this? It should be cheaper for me. Is that why you're, oh no, it's not the cost of living. It's the workforce cost. But even the cost of living is no different for me, really. I mean, the only thing that's cheaper here is gasoline. Now, housing has gone way up in Salt Lake City. So I don't know if that's my pattern, because I know I have a pattern about being treated fairly. If people keep saying, don't you understand that life is not fair? And I say, well, I know that, but it should be. And I can get upset about being treated unfairly. And I did get upset. I tried to make the case and made a nice PowerPoint presentation for them about how I was a human being. And just like all other human beings, I didn't like being steamrollered by big corporate organizations that have no idea about my, anyway, that's my personal story about it. I got them to reduce the percentage they were going to cut my pay by a few percent. So anyway. And I mentioned before being raised in church religious science, new thought, right? On the positive thinking and you can have what you want thinking. This is very popular these days, has been for quite a while. And a recent manifestation of that was the movie The Secret. I want to talk about that a little bit. It has some very inspired people talking about how the laws of life work, laws of manifestation. And there's some very true things. I mean, that the universe is basically set up to manifest things. This is a kind of automatic machinery, and that we are creators. Things I agree with completely. We are gods in embryo. We are creating circumstances and possibilities for ourselves all the time. And the way that works is we have an idea. We really focus on the idea. We concentrate on it. And we then wrap that mental idea in emotional clothing, which is desire, the desire that idea should manifest. This emotional charge that we contribute to by repeatedly focusing on our desire for this, it's translated into physical energy. Our physical activities are the result of emotional energy at work. Our desires set us in motion. So we can have what we want. I actually do believe that everybody can manifest what they want. And we learn that way. Sai Baba used to say, he used to manifest rings and vibhuti, all that stuff for people that would come to him. And he says, I manifest things for people because that's what they want. But I do it in hopes that they will learn to ask for what I really want to give them, which was the knowledge that he wanted to share with them. We learn from getting what we want, and therefore it's all set up so that we can get what we want and learn. If we have a strong desire to be wealthy, as so many have, it will manifest eventually, sooner rather than later, depending on how strong the desire is and the willingness to focus on it. We'll have that experience. We're here in this human world to have all the human experiences that help us learn and grow and get through it. Being wealthy might be one just about everybody wants and has at some time or other. When I say we can have what we want, there is an exception to that. That's important. Wanting a particular person. We don't get to just choose a person and say, I want that person. That's a violation of the law of freedom that says that we have right to do or think, say anything we want as long as it doesn't impinge on the equal right of others. Well, I have to respect that other person's godhood and embryo lets them choose. So, interesting thing about The Secret, that a lot of the focus was on how you could focus on having $1 million, use your powers of manifestation, And that would be it. That there really wasn't work required besides focusing on it, building desire for it. And the thing about money is it's a people thing. If you're going to make money, you're going to do things with money, it's other people are involved. You know, if there's going to be an opportunity for you to make money, it's going to be a group effort. You know, winning the lottery is about the only way you're going to make it all by yourself. I don't even know if that counts as making money. So if you're a person that thinks I'm gonna get this money without any work, well, those are the kind of people that you attract to your endeavor. People that are sure they can get what they want without any work. And those are the worst business partners ever. So that's a big flaw in this theory. I mean, if people are willing to make an effort, if you're willing to reach out to find ways and you're willing to work and you're willing to meet the universe halfway. I mean, when I say the universe, I'm really talking about, you know, the powers of manifestation that we talked about here. But if there's something you want, like you're looking for a partner, you're looking for opportunities, if you put yourself out there, and you might find that it's not even halfway that you have to meet it. You just have to make it known that you're looking for this help. I mean, after all of our souls are connected. All of them are working in perfect union of consciousness to help the monads that we are evolve through our personalities. They're all working on that. And they can arrange things. I do think there's a lot that happens behind the scenes, arranging opportunities for us, whether they're for destiny or for karma. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. It's, you know, if you're asking for a fortune, are you asking for the responsibility that goes with it? That's another part of it. Let's hope so. You know, when you serve the beings that are guides from the next kingdom, which is certainly a goal for many of us, is to be serving the cause of introducing truth and enlightenment and the higher level emotional world, mental world that is possible for us, which really can make it a heaven world for us here. If you're serving them, they don't pay you in money. That's not your reward. Your reward is more opportunities. If you do well with the opportunities you have, you get more opportunities. And just to circle back a little bit, if you're looking to make money, maybe this is strictly a worldly observation and not, I think it is spiritual. It's group oriented, right? If you're somebody who can help other people make money, you're going to be popular in all the circles. You will find people that will want to work with you. And if you can find others also of a like mind, if you're all trying to help each other make money, those are good business partners. You know, the universe is an interesting place. There ain't really no free lunch. The ain't no free lunch idea is how it works. I mean, every single thing that we borrow from the universe to get through the human kingdom, we're borrowing the material from our body. We pay it back in ways. We maybe are increasing the vibrational frequency, the material of our bodies, or we and if we're borrowing from others, you know, if people are giving us opportunities, it's because we've earned them somehow before, or we'll pay them back somehow. Great intelligences and beings in this universe are involved in maintaining balance. This is a cosmic-wide phenomenon. The balance must be restored. And humanity is expert at setting things out of balance. And so sometimes the restoration is rather harsh. When we find that our choices have been selfish, then the consequences are not very good in terms of restoring balance. And before we can actually graduate to that next kingdom of, well, as I have a whole talk on that, next kingdom beyond human, which is certainly the goal, ultimate goal of making it through the human kingdom, we're going to have to pay back every single bit of the karma, good or bad. It all has to be resolved. There cannot be any human karma left when we move on to the next kingdom. When we talk about personal choices, a very important personal choice that I'm not sure people are all that aware of is what to do with their savings, or how to invest money responsibly. You know, I'm probably not somebody to take advice from on how to invest well. I just meant I'm lucky if I can keep my money with investments and not lose it to inflation or whatever. It's good if you can make money from your investments, but if you blindly invest, you know, the index funds that are the rage these days, where you're basically buying all the companies in the S&P 500. Well, some of those companies are the ones I referred to earlier that are the only winners of wars, you know, and others exploit differences in people and encourage hatred, you know. There are companies that profit from addiction. There's the Purdue Pharmaceutical and all of its happy to send more opiates out there to get people addicted because, boy, they make more money that way. You know, even if your Facebook stock has been doing really well for you, it's really not worth it to be sharing responsibility with Facebook for the hatred and lies that are sowed. And, you know, the deaths, they finally just recently got the anti-vax conspiracy off. But how many people died along the way down that road because they were convinced by things they saw on Facebook? Henry Laurency actually says the best thing to do with your money is put it in the hands of an esoteric money manager. And if any of you know one of those, please send them my way. I don't know any esoteric money managers. What a fine thing if we were to meet one of those people. That would be excellent. I like the idea a lot, and then how do you even tell, right? So many people would probably love to convince you that they're an esoteric money manager. So jobs. Let's talk about jobs a little bit. You know, don't choose it. Don't put up with a toxic environment. I think there's a belief pattern of lack behind tolerating being mistreated at work. I think there's always a higher option, and I think that's another path. Just think, well, this is the best I can do. You know, I think that that's certainly not what a loving universe would provide to you if you were to be open for something better. I mean, no one is more responsible for you than you. You know, getting a job can be just the right thing, but do something that feeds you and serves others if you can. I mean, God will provide. People lean on that. But as I said, the universe will more often meet you halfway if you make a sincere effort. You know, I had a friend who was wondering if she should, you know, she'd lost her job and she was wondering if she should just go become a penniless pilgrim or something like that. You know, just go couch surfing with friends all over the place. And I don't know, start a quest to seek in that way, or if she should go get another job. And she asked if I knew someone who could advise her. And I sent her to Leonard Shaw. Some of you might know him, a beautiful soul, a really beautiful soul living in Seattle, who teaches about love and forgiveness and who's spoken here at Theosophical Society. She went to him and she told him her conundrum. He said, "You need to get a job." She was kind of surprised at the advice. It wasn't the spiritual advice she was hoping for, but it was very direct. And I think she took that advice. When we talk about personal choices, giving, of course, you know, lean on the law of sowing and reaping. Giving is not losing. It's not parting with it. You've just set something in motion that's going to come back to you, and could be multiple times over. You know, looking at how careful the universe is to balance its books, maybe not multiple times over, but it does come back to you. Little amounts that you give add up with many others' little amounts. It can have a really big effect. And I'm going to come back to that topic later, because it's very important to many different good causes. Well, if we talk about money and spirituality, when you talk about religions, and money. There's such a legend of the great wealth of the Catholic Church. And they sure got themselves in trouble with money back in the 1500s, selling indulgences. Oh, you want to commit this particular sin? That will be X ducats. You know, you can buy yourself pre-forgiveness for whatever it is that you're going to do. Well, that's why Martin Luther was able to take hold, and the Reformation of the Catholic Church was forced. It almost destroyed the Catholic Church. Like Laurency says that the guides of our races were quite dismayed that it didn't destroy the Catholic Church. If Martin Luther hadn't risen up with such resistance to it, it would have finally conked out. I mean, it really was corrupt and rotten at the point, and let's hope it's a lot better now. I'm not hearing very many good things, but still there are beautiful souls in all of the religions that must have to respect that people find God and Christ and goodness in themselves through these religions. Hinduism has no conflict with being wealthy, or Islam, or Christianity, certainly. Mormon wealth is an interesting topic here in Utah. And the Mormon Church has acquired a $100 billion investment portfolio that was a very well-kept secret until somebody blabbed about it recently. And it's interesting. I would like to know what they invest. I mean, they said that 40 billion in U.S. stock and timberland and hedge funds. But I suppose on that, maybe it's like the Catholic Church where they own these big facilities and temples. They're very quiet about it. It's a charitable institution. In this country, religions don't pay taxes. And I'm not saying they're abusing it. When I see these televangelists who are begging their flock on TV for more money so they can buy a private jet because they don't want to get vaccinated and fly commercial, well, this is shameless greed is another name for that kind of thing. And yet people, I don't know why people give them money. And maybe they think they're buying forgiveness for themselves somewhere. But the karmic outcome of fleecing all of these poor people for greedy physical plane luxury, I can't imagine what that outcome would be. Scientology is an interesting case. I talked about that in a previous talk. My grandfather, Norman, he was living in LA. So was L. Ron Hubbard. He'd heard about the very beginnings of Scientology, and he went to meet Mr. Hubbard and talked to him. And L. Ron Hubbard told him the same thing that he actually told a lot of other people. And this confirms that he had told it to my grandfather. He said, you know, he'd had been a science fiction writer. He said, oh, money, there's no money in science fiction. The real money is in religion. He's very upfront about it. And the money is certainly in religion. When you look at Scientology, you can spend a fortune trying to achieve their levels of enlightenment. You'd think when it was such a bald-faced approach to it, that people would be discouraged, but no, I guess maybe they think that's true too. It's the real money is in religion. You know, when you see people raising money for religions, I wonder if you're looking at it from the esoteric perspective, if they would do the same if they knew that they're not just raising money for their God, that it's really all one consciousness in the divine kingdoms, same God, Allah. There's certainly many divine beings, and the one consciousness could be called God, but I don't think you can just support one of them. They're all in unity in the higher worlds. So another interesting topic, spiritual work and money. I talked to a counselor about this, how she, balances that. And she had some very, I thought, wise things to say. What is practical? What serves the needs of both sides? Obviously, there's a lot of training involved in being a good counselor for people, and it can be very spiritual work. It's giving from both sides. It's giving money, giving time, giving advice, giving the opportunity. Each gives the other an opportunity. It's an investment in the receiver, giving in this case, although there shouldn't be any strings attached in that investment. You don't want to be buyable. And if you give enough money, you tell people what they want to hear. That's once again, Fox News. But you have to examine your motives and theirs. And there are some people that truly need to give, and people put value on what they've given money for. If people that need help give money it keeps the money circulating, it's generally something that has to be negotiated with individuals and individual situations. Edgar Casey didn't take money, but he eventually started a foundation that people could give to that did support him. Like I said, my grandfather, in his many years of having meditation groups and teaching in Southern California, he took money for what it takes to keep the information circulating. And it wasn't really for him. I don't think he took money for himself. Esoteric teachers, on the other hand, Laurency is very specific about those who are trying to teach esoterics. He says, you do no business in esoteric literature. In that respect, it is a matter of sacrificing your money, or at the utmost, selling the books at cost price. Esoteric authors do not live by their books, no more than esotericians charge people for their services. And he cites the biblical quote, freely you have received, freely give. And this, I'm not going to argue with Laurency on this one. And it makes me very glad that from all my work, I will have saved up enough money to support myself so that I can give without charging when I get the opportunity to do more of that. That's my plan, if there are enough people interested in what I have to give. But, there have been shamans in ancient cultures and throughout time, and both the individuals and the community supported these people. They're recognized as important, not just by the individuals who wanted their services, but by the community. I mean, certainly recognizing the importance of doctors and counselors in our community is a good thing, and it's perhaps another argument for universal health care. Laurency emphasizes that powers are not exhibited for the curious, least of all for money. We acquire these powers considered supernatural through efforts to serve. Doctors especially acquire clairvoyance and other abilities like that because they're sincerely trying to help. But it doesn't sound good for people who are using those to impress or, make money and put on a show. So I'm going to say in conclusion here that when you're wanting money, look deeper and see what you want the money for. If you want the money in order to provide a better home for your family, then focus on the better home for the family. That's a truer, deeper request. Asking for money is like just money. It's like saying, I want the ability to have something and to decide what it is later and maybe change my mind about it. That's what you can do if you get the money. It's always a means to an end. So focus on the end. This human experience where we suffer in so many different ways. We lose people through death, and we are betrayed, and we're hurt. We suffered physical injury. There's this drama of life, and the passion and the joy, the difficult moments that turn our stony hearts, and we probably all start out with hearts of stone on the beginning of the human kingdom, and by the end of it, these hammer blows of loss and suffering actually soften our hearts to the point where we understand compassion, where we're willing to look at being one with everybody. This is a human experience. Money is just a tool, a factor on the stage here. It can't buy you gratitude. It can't buy friendship. It can't buy you peace of mind. The best thing I ever did with money, I think, I get a lot of joy from thinking about it anyway, was I had some neighbors who they were struggling to start their own business. It wasn't going very well. They were really struggling with money. They had a little daughter, not much different age than mine. And I was very concerned about them. And I was okay with money at the time. It was actually, I had more money at that time than I've had a lot of other times. So I put $1,000 in an envelope and wrote, "You are loved" on it. And I put it in their mailbox. And I never heard anything about it, but things got better for them. The company seemed to work. I moved away and checked in a couple of years later, and they were happy. Things were doing well. And I don't know what their reaction to that was, really, but I still feel really good about it. I mean, maybe I fantasize about how it saved this couple's marriage, or meant this child didn't have to listen to parents arguing and suffering and going through hell over money. Maybe it helped prevent that from happening. Money can do so many good things. And every incarnation, we're faced with it again. At least for thousands of years, and who knows how many thousands to come, we'll be back here dealing with money again. So don't, the love of money is the root of all evil. The Bible says, well, there's a lot of truth to that. So don't let the love of money take the driver's seat in your life. It's too easy to let that happen. It can cost you your self-respect. That's another thing you can't buy with money. So the best thing we can learn from money is what is really valuable, truly valuable, and use money to serve that.